A fundamental change is sweeping the nation. As the state media went into collective silence around the fourth plenary session, the internet exploded with speculation. Some claim the internal conflicts at the highest level have become an open war, while others suggest a major shift is coming to China. Yet the public's hope for change isn't a desire for freedom or prosperity. It's a plea for a single answer. When will this devastating economic dream finally end? A 6-year-old recording is going viral again across the web, an urgent warning from economist Xiang Songzuo. A statement he made in 2019 now sounds like a prophecy. If an economic model like China's, where the government, businesses, and individuals, from top to bottom, are all propped up by debt and leverage, can still be sustained, it would be a violation of all natural laws. He wasn't wrong. Zhu Yunlai, the son of former Premier Zhu Rongji and former CEO of CICC, once calculated China's total debt exceeded 600 trillion yuan. What does that number mean? It signifies that every Chinese family, every business, and every government department is tethered to the same debt lifeline, which could snap at any moment. 600 trillion is an astronomical figure. It's 5 times China's GDP and nearly 10 times the disposable income of all residents, an abyss deep enough to swallow decades of accumulated wealth. Corporate debt, particularly from local government financing vehicles, accounts for the largest share, followed by household debt, with government debt coming in third. Essentially, the lives of ordinary citizens are mortgaged to real estate. Xiang Songzuo also noted in that speech, 80% of the wealth of the Chinese people is tied up in property. This reality stings millions. Today, in 2025, the pace of the housing market collapse is far exceeding all expectations. From major metropolitan areas to small county seats, real estate has become a negative asset. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, new home sales nationwide have fallen by over 35% in the past 2 years, and the inventory of unsold commercial property has hit a historical high of over 700 million square meters. Statistics from the Centerline Property Agency are even more alarming. Housing prices in over 650 Chinese cities have regressed to 2016 levels. This means the homes the average middle-class family purchased with a decade of savings are now worth less than the original down payment. Their wealth wasn't lost in the stock market. It was evaporated in the dream of secure housing. Empty commercial streets and blocks of new, unvisited housing developments are the starkest irony of this era. Xiang Songzuo was correct. When a country's most profitable entities are tobacco and real estate, not manufacturing and technology, its economic structure is already critically ill. Former central bank governor Zhou Xiaochuan issued a grave caution. The true risk lies in the Minsky moment. This term, once confined to financial textbooks, now feels like a sword hanging overhead. The Minsky moment is the day people suddenly realize their assets, stocks, property, funds, are effectively worthless. Confidence evaporates, capital rushes out, and the market crashes. Everyone tries to escape, but no one can get out. Since 2024, the evidence of this moment has mounted. Evergrande's bankruptcy, Country Garden's delisting, Sunak's restructuring. Major property developers are collapsing in succession. Concurrently, the debt of local governments is ballooning. Estimates put the hidden or implicit debt of local governments alone at a staggering 60 trillion yuan, far beyond the central government's ability to absorb. Crucially, this is not a series of isolated events, but the explosion of a systemic failure. For 2 decades, the Chinese economy generated an illusion of prosperity through credit. Now, as credit collapses, that illusion is being exposed. The scale of local government bond issuance in 2025 has hit yet another record. According to the Shanghai Securities News, as of October 11th, local bond issuance for the year surpassed 8.5 trillion yuan. This figure is not just large, it's terrifying. It's not an investment signal, it's a life support signal. Local governments are using this 8.5 trillion for three things, often called the three axes of survival. First, new bonds to boost GDP. Second, refinancing bonds to cover old debt. Third, special project bonds to settle overdue bills. While it's presented as development, its true function is a blood transfusion. The system's logic has been inverted. It was once borrowing for construction. Now, it's borrowing to stay afloat. Around 4.3 trillion of the 8.5 trillion is classified as new bonds for investment projects like infrastructure and housing. But most of these projects are low yield or non-revenue generating, unable to generate cash flow. Dushan County in Guizhou is a prime example. A poor county that racked up 40 billion in debt through financing vehicles, resulting in a city now riddled with unfinished projects. Another portion, nearly 2 trillion in refinancing bonds, is essentially kicking the can down the road, extending the debt's term but not reducing its size. Local finances are on an ICU respirator, breathing but far from healthy. The final 1.2 trillion in special project debt is nominally new but is actually being used to pay off contractors and suppliers. This is a clear indicator of utterly depleted fiscal cash flow. Local governments can't even maintain routine operating expenses. As one commentator put it wryly, they used to borrow money to build roads and bridges. Now they're borrowing money to pay for the roads and bridges someone else already built. Xiang Songzuo's warnings are now materialized in every financial statement and debt ledger. This crisis is no longer localized. It is seeping into every province, every city, and every household. The Chinese economy is truly standing at the entrance to the Minsky moment. The debt problem has transcended economics. It is now a political problem. A regime's legitimacy is often founded on the narrative that tomorrow will be better. But when the accounts reveal the truth and local governments can barely pay their staff, that narrative collapses. In 2025, several provinces reported a rare negative growth in their fiscal data. Data released by the Ministry of Finance in July showed that over 70% of provinces saw a decline in fiscal revenue, with the northeast and western regions hit hardest. In some cities, civil servants' salaries are delayed, teachers' bonuses are slashed, and hospital funding is cut off. These signs indicate the fiscal blood is clotting. When local governments rely on issuing bonds to cover payroll and on transfer payments to function, the system is no longer fiscally healthy. It's being kept alive on life support. The more alarming development is how the debt crisis is tearing apart the power structure. The central government wants stability. Local governments want survival. The central government demands debt reduction, risk mitigation, and deleveraging. Yet local authorities are secretly borrowing new to pay old, and implicitly adding leverage. On one side, the leadership urges risk prevention. On the other, local officials are desperately printing money to save themselves. This isn't a policy disagreement. It's an existential conflict. This is why, behind the silence of the fourth plenary session, speculation abounds. Some suggest the top echelons in Beijing have split into two factions. Others believe the debt crisis has become the new flashpoint for political struggle. The economic breakdown in China, some argue, is morphing into a political rupture. If the debt crisis is destroying the country's financial plumbing, the confidence crisis is gutting its social middle layer. According to central bank data, as of June 2025, China's household leverage ratio reached an all-time high of 64.7%. This isn't a sign of wealth. It's a reflection of poverty, with more families overwhelmed by mortgages, auto loans, and education debt. Statistics show that over 70% of Chinese household assets are in real estate, and with the crash in property values, the actual worth of those assets has shrunk by nearly 30%. In effect, hundreds of millions of middle-class families are experiencing invisible bankruptcy. The younger generation, meanwhile, is facing total despair. The official youth unemployment rate for those aged 16 to 24, whose statistics were resumed in the summer of 2025, stands at a suffocating 21.9%. This figure excludes those in flexible employment and pseudo-employment. Private estimates suggest the real number is closer to 40%. They are being forced to return to the village to start a business, deliver takeout, or drive for ride-sharing. They know it's not entrepreneurship, it's exile. They are not pursuing a dream. They are clinging to survival. As the fiscal system teeters, social confidence collapses, and the state begins its self-rescue, the method chosen is not reform, but diversion. We see this in the intense wave of anti-corruption, high-level officials being arrested, business leaders disappearing. Meanwhile, the propaganda machine relentlessly broadcasts positive energy, urging people to keep the faith and work together. But people know that when you can't get paid, when your house won't sell, and when your children can't find a job, no amount of positive energy can save reality. Incomplete statistics show that in the first half of 2025 alone, at least 300 executives of state-owned enterprises were investigated, including key figures in finance, energy, and real estate. This is not a sign of a cleaner government. It is the decay of the system. Each anti-corruption drive is both an internal purge and a redistribution of resources. Fighting corruption has become a tool to deflect from the latest debt crisis, sacrificing one group to buy temporary stability. But when power starts devouring power, the system itself is not far from collapse. China has reached a critical turning point where reform is non-negotiable. Continuing to rely on adding leverage and investment for growth is not only ineffective, but poses a risk of systemic failure. Yet, who will carry out this reform? The bureaucratic system already mired in problems? The heavily indebted local governments? Or the depleted middle class? There are no answers, and no one dares to provide one, because every answer comes at a cost. China in 2025 is like a giant vessel, full of debt and illusion, sailing into uncharted waters. A storm looms ahead, but those at the helm are fighting over the compass. 600 trillion in debt, 8.5 trillion in local bonds, 21.9% youth unemployment, a 35% drop in home prices. Each number is a crack in the era, and every news report reflects a collapse of confidence. Xiang Songzuo's phrase from years ago is now an epitaph etched on the ruins. If this model can still be sustained, it would be a violation of all natural laws. The country may not collapse overnight, but it is moving steadily toward that Minsky moment. That moment will not be the day housing prices hit bottom, or the stock market is wiped out. It will be the day the entire Chinese populace permanently loses faith in the future. And that day may be closer than anyone is willing to imagine. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey to unveil China's many layers. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button to stay updated. See you in the next video.